What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Offseason Recap. Today we're going to be looking at the Baltimore Ravens, a team that has gone through a ton of changes this offseason, mainly the head coaching change, getting rid of longtime head coach John Harbaugh in favor of Jesse Minter. John Harbaugh has been with this team for a very long time. He's won a Super Bowl with them. It has been a minute. They've been up and down. They've had one of the best quarterbacks in the league in Lamar Jackson, and they haven't really been able to capitalize with him. Haven't really made it deep in the playoffs, haven't made a Super Bowl. That needed to change. They need to take a step up. Now, I think John Harbaugh is a good coach. I think he's going to fit in great with the Giants. I think he's exactly what the Giants need, a guy who can come in and set a culture, raise the floor, and bring in other coaches, which he's very good at. He's shown in the past that he's been able to bring in incredible assistant coaches, and he did with the Giants, I think. And I think he's going to raise up the team. But I think over the past couple years with the Ravens, he doesn't have a feature or a part of his coaching where he really elevates the team. He relies on other people to, scheme and create for the team. You look at guys like Mike Macdonald, who took this defense and now is with the Seahawks, made this defense incredible. John Harbaugh can't do that. He's a former special teams coordinator. He can't call plays. He's really just the leader, kind of facilitating things. You look at Jesse Minter, though. He's a defensive mastermind. He can create incredible schemes and do incredible things on the defensive end and really raise the floor, but also raise the ceiling of this team because of what he brings. Then if he gets supplement with good, staff members, obviously a good offensive coordinator to go along with him, a good defensive coordinator and assistant coaches that can help him with the defense, I think he provides possibly a higher ceiling and possibly a more long-term higher ceiling because of, if he's their head coach and he does well, they're not going to lose his defense. It should be there for a while. Which, it sucks if you're a Ravens fan, if you wanted John Harbaugh to stay. I know a lot of people didn't want him to stay. They wanted to move on. But John Harbaugh did a lot for this team. I think he did a good job of just winning, kind of similar to Mike Tomlin. But eventually, you do kind of have to move on. And I think he's going to fit in well with the Giants. But the Ravens need to go in a new direction. But I really like Jesse Minter. He's very similar in style to Mike Macdonald for the Seahawks. He was at Michigan. He was with the Chargers last year as a defensive coordinator. Did very well with them. Just incredible amounts of pressure. The run defense was not great, but there is some nuance that, was it the players, was it the coaching? What was it? But him and Mike Macdonald both have and a bunch of other coaches do this, but I think him and Mike Macdonald do this at the top of the league, and that's what kind of separates them, is that they have very confusing defenses. And a word that I've recently saw somebody use and I really like is they use basically shape-shifting defenses. And I just want to draw a picture really quickly of, what I mean by that. So right here, just look, you have like a base defense, just a base nickel defense. You're looking at this could probably be like a base cover two, just this safety getting a deep half right here, this safety getting a deep half, this Mike dropping into zone here, Will dropping into zone, and then the nickel dropping in here, and this corner getting a flat, this corner getting a flat. Just a basic zone coverage, right? But guys like Mike Macdonald or Jesse Minter can still run that cover two look, but they'll do it like this. If we just move a couple pieces around, move this up here, move this maybe here, slide this over a little bit. It's not exact alignment, but basically just to draw a picture, they can basically run, or maybe you want to do this actually, because this actually is more in tune maybe with maybe something versatile that the Ravens could do. Maybe this could be Kyle Hamilton. Maybe this is Roquan Smith. Maybe this actually here, and you want Roquan Smith up here, maybe getting after the quarterback a little bit. Just, mess around with it. But they could still run that cover two look out of this. Maybe you actually have this corner line up back further a little bit, and this guy here. And then you still have this, you have the same personnel, but you run that cover two defense that I showed earlier. You have this dropping back here. Maybe this guy turns into a half, and then maybe Kyle Hamilton blitzes, or, maybe he's the one rushing, and then this guy, this edge rusher, maybe he drops into the flat, and then this Will is dropping into the into like a mid zone here, and same with the Mike, same with the nickel, and then this corner's getting a flat. But there's so many different things you could do here. You could drop a nickel blitz, like a simulated pressure, where you're dropping both of these guys back and then dropping this back, and then you have these four rush. There's so many different things you could do and just confuse an offense where they just don't know what's going on. You look at this, you're like, okay, maybe it's a cover one blitz. This safety is getting just like he's playing deep. And maybe it's a cover one man. These guys are manned up, and you got maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 guys in the line of scrimmage. Then this linebacker could also blitz. Who knows what's going to happen here? There's so many different things you could draw up here. Hell, you could drop all of these guys back. You could blitz the Mike and then drop the nose tackle back into coverage. Ton of different things you could do, and the offense has no clue what's coming. And like I said with that earlier with the word shape-shifting, something like this can completely change. Or they could run, this out of that base cover 2 look that I was talking about earlier when we first started. So just drop everybody back to where they were. And then like they could run basically what we were just showing from this, where like maybe this guy just creeps down early in the play, and then all of a sudden he's blitzing, and maybe this guy's blitzing, maybe the nickel's coming. Then all of a sudden they're in a cover 1 look, and now you're like, oh crap, what just happened? How did they get there? And they'll sell it to the last second. You won't know what's happening. I saw that. I was watching some film, and that was something that they did where it's like they're showing cover 2 to the very last second, and the players are executing it perfectly. Like these 2 safeties are even backing up before the ball snapped. Then as soon as the ball snapped, all of a sudden this safety's just driving down, and all of a sudden you're like, a quarterback is like, okay, they're both driving back, it's gonna be cover 2, and all of a sudden he's running up, and is it cover 1, cover 3? What's happening? Is there a blitz coming? What do I have to get the ball out quickly? Am I gonna have a lot of time? What's just so much happening, just completely messing with the quarterback. And we've seen that do so much. And he can apply pressure and get pressure without sending these massive blitzes. He could get pressure with 4 or 5 guys, especially with the guys on this team doing different stunts and twists. Basically, an example of that could be like maybe this tackle here is just ramming in here, and this guard's following him, and this tackle picks him up, and then this end just comes through here and gets the quarterback. Just like different disguised, not just general like pass rush where this guy's going here, this guy's going here, this guy's going here, like that. They could generate pressure with only sending a couple guys. They don't have to send everybody. And that showed up extremely valuable in the Super Bowl last year with the Seahawks. They were just destroying the Patriots on the line of scrimmage, stopping the run, getting after the quarterback, and they weren't sending a ton of blitzes. Throughout the year, they actually sent more blitzes in that game than they really did throughout the year. They were sending cornerback blitzes, Devon Witherspoon was coming, and you think about it, throughout the year, if the Seahawks aren't sending blitzes, then all of a sudden they get to Super Bowl, the Patriots might not have been expecting that, and all of a sudden Devon Witherspoon's coming flying from the nickel and getting a sack. Jesse Minter can draw similar stuff to that, and he gets an amazing chess piece in Kyle Hamilton. It's very similar to Derwin James, who we had with the Chargers. He just move him anywhere. He could probably play off the edge if you wanted him to. He could play in the nickel. He could play as a hybrid linebacker. He could play safety. He could play deep. He could play up on line of scrimmage. Like he could play anywhere, and he could employ him in so many different areas. And they brought in some other players this offseason that I think can really work with him very well, and Jesse Minter can put them in great spots. But I think what separates Jesse Minter, Mike McDonald, these other guys from other coaches is that they just find the best way to get a player involved, and they help them out a ton. The preparation that they put these players through to just be like, I want to make you the best player that I can. If that player was playing for any other team, they might not be as good as them. They're just raising their floor and their ceiling. It's very impressive what they do. And he could, if you give him elite players like Kyle Hamilton, like Trey Hendrickson, oh my gosh. Now there's a huge problem. Now these guys, now he has elite pieces to work with. He was already causing chaos with, you could say like mediocre, like average pieces. He had some good players with the Chargers, but like you get what I'm saying. Like he can do a lot with the players he's given and just be a nightmare for offense. I really like Jesse Minter, if you couldn't tell. We should probably move on to Declan Doyle before this episode's like 3 hours long. They bring in Declan Doyle to be their offensive coordinator. Actually, let's talk about Anthony Weaver first. Finish up the defense. They bring in Anthony Weaver from the Dolphins, was their defensive coordinator last year. He's been with the Ravens. He's been around for a while. Former defensive lineman. He's very good at scheming up like pass rush, like stunts, twists, helping guys develop as pass rushers, like young guys. And then he's very good at coordinating in the run game, stopping the run, which Jesse Minter's Chargers last year were not great at that. Once again, Not 100% sure why, but there's many factors. But I think Anthony Weaver could complement him very well. I think both of them will work together very well. And then Declan Doyle, like I was saying, comes over from being the offensive coordinator for the Bears last year with Ben Johnson, learning from him. And before he was with Ben Johnson last year as offensive coordinator, he was a tight ends coach for the Broncos with Sean Payton. And then I believe he was with the Saints before that. I believe he was still with Sean Payton then. So he's been around some of the best offensive minds in our game. Ben Johnson last year just did so many great things with that Bears offense, just drawing up so many different plays, getting all their playmakers involved. And Sean Payton, we know for past decade, however long it's been, longer than I've been alive, that Sean Payton's been doing a lot of like great things schematically. With Drew Brees, all the different players he's had. Declan Doyle's got a great offensive mind. He's very similar to like the Clint Kubiak, Shanahan kind of stuff, where it's gonna be a lot of pre-snap movement. There's gonna be a lot of 11, 12, 13 or 12 or 13 personnel. Multiple tight ends. Might see some fullbacks, not in the same sense as you might know with like Patrick Ricard. I mean more so tight ends just lining up as a fullback. There's a couple players they brought in I think can actually play that role, which we'll talk about. Kind of similar to, you look at the Bears last year. We'll just talk about what he had. They had Cole Kmet, Colson Loveland, Durham Smythe, who's on this team now. They would have those three out there, but then they'd have one of them as a fullback. Maybe it was Durham Smythe, maybe Colson Loveland was in there in the backfield. It just provides more of, rather than just like an insane blocker like Patrick Ricard, more of a receiving threat. So while he can block very well still, whoever the tight end is, there's another athlete out there who causes some chaos. So I really love what they did with their coaching staff. I think they're elevating both their floor and their ceiling. They're getting guys that are just going to make everybody better. And then I think that this team, I don't think that it's going to adopt like solely a power or man/gap run game or solely a zone run scheme. I think they're going to put a bunch of things together. I think this is going to be a really dynamic and really fun offense to watch because they're going to do a ton of different stuff because they have so many interesting players, specifically Lamar Jackson, who can do things that, quite frankly, nobody else on the NFL can do. You have guys like Derrick Henry, who wants to tackle him? Nobody. Mark Andrews, Zay Flowers, they've got a lot of weapons. And I think giving different looks and just not allowing the defense to know what you're doing and having all these playmakers, I think the offense is going to be good. I think the defense is going to be good. I think they hit home runs with this coaching staff. Anyway, let's move on to their free agents. We'll just really quickly talk about who they lost. I already actually talked about some of these players in the videos I posted for the teams they went to, such as the Raiders with Linderbaum, some of these Giants guys. And then we'll talk about these guys more so in the videos on the teams they're signed to. But Tyler Linderbaum, massive contract, huge hole that he's leaving at center. They didn't really bring in anybody to replace him. So there's going to be a big competition there. Talk about some of the guys they brought in, but basically it's just going to be like a conglomeration of people competing for that starting spot. We'll see what happens. Isaiah Likely, huge hole. Such a great pass catcher in 12 personnel. Goes to the Giants. They draft some tight ends, I think, that can replace him. Not the same player, but fine. Draymond Jones, been moving around a lot. Signs for the Patriots. Solid pass rusher, run defender. Charlie Kolar, big loss for the Ravens. Kind of an underrated guy, but like a good blocker. And can catch the ball pretty well in like 13 personnel, like your third tight end. I think he's going to make a big impact on the Chargers. Alohi Gilman was in the Odafe Owe trade, where I believe they sent Odafe Owe and a 2027 seventh, not second, seventh, for Alohi Gilman and a fifth. So they let Alohi Gilman walk, and the Chargers let Odafe Owe walk. So I guess you could say that the Ravens won that trade because they kind of ended up trading a seventh for a fifth, if you want to look at it like that. But got just watch there. Keaton Mitchell, incredible athlete, just got hurt a bunch. Such a good playmaker. I kind of wish that the Ravens had brought him back, but oh well. Jordan Stout they lose. Oh, by the way, special teams coordinator. You got a lot of some huge shoes to fill for John Harbaugh as a special teams, wizard. So they're gonna have to. Hopefully, there's no issues there. But lose Patrick Ricard. I think that's a big loss to the culture and kind of the locker room. But I think moving into a new offensive scheme, I think they could use Pat Ricard. I think he honestly would have been more of like an inline tight end guy, like an extra offensive lineman who can move and also can leak out and catch the ball. but, goes to the Giants, follows John Harbaugh. Ardarius Washington, they lose. He was hurt last year. Smaller guy. They kind of replaced him. Jake Hummel, they lose. Tylan Wallace was a good special teamer. They lose. Daniel Fa'alele was a starter for them. Probably should have been a starter for them. Massive guy. Goes on to the Giants. And David Ajabo, former second-round pick who ended up tearing his ACL in the draft process. Could have been a first-round pick, but never worked out for them. Really sad situation. But it's everybody they lost. And then let's talk about the guys they brought in. Trey Hendrickson. Big contract, 4 years, $112 million. Let's talk about what happened leading up to this with the Max Crosby trade. If you don't remember, Max Crosby was in a deal. There was a set in stone trade where everybody's reporting it. The Rappaports, the Schefters, we all knew about it. And then we come to find out a day later, whatever it was, Max Crosby's failed his physical. The trade's off. It was the 14th overall pick this year and a first-round pick next year. Doesn't happen. They call it off. They fail his physical. They end up bringing Trey Hendrickson. I think Max Crosby's a better player. I think Max Crosby is going to be healthy. But if you're talking about Max Crosby versus Trey Hendrickson, but then you also take into account the 2 first-round picks you lost, also Vega, Ioane, and then whoever you get next year, I think fans would probably be fine with Trey Hendrickson. But Max Crosby, I think, is a better play. But I think this is a good contract, very good pass rusher, solid run defender. But you're really getting him for the pass rush. They've been kind of lacking a true premier edge rusher. They've had Kyle Van Noy has been very good, but they didn't bring him back. He's getting a little bit older. I don't know if anybody's going to sign him. If somebody does sign him, I think they're going to get a good veteran presence. I think the Ravens have a lot in that room, so I don't think they're going to bring him back. But Trey Hendrickson's the true number 1 edge they've kind of been lacking. Then they bring in John Simpson, who veteran guard, solid player, good pass blocker, good run blocker, can provide some stability on the interior considering they lost their center. They don't really have one, and they also have Venga, so it kind of when you have better players around you, everybody starts to play better. So if you have 4 really good players, then one who's not great, that fifth guy gets elevated. So bringing him, veteran guy, I think he could help along the interior of the offensive line. Then we see Jen Hawkins. He's got range. He can play over the top as a true single high free safety. Obviously too high. I think they have 3 good safeties on this team. They have Kyle Hamilton, obviously. They drafted Malachi Starks last year in the first. They bring in Jalen Hawkins. But they also have a guy like Marlon Humphrey in the slot as their nickel corner. So I do have questions about how all these guys are going to get on the field, which we can actually go back here. Basically, the free safety, I don't know if Malachi Starks or Jalen Hawkins is going to start there, which one's going to be there. All the depth chart outlets, they have Marlon Humphrey here as a nickel, and then their other 2 boundary corners, then Kyle Hamilton's here, Malachi Starks is here. But there's different formations and packages they could get into where, they have 3 safeties. Then I question, is Marlon Humphrey coming off the field? Is he going to play the boundary? We could talk about that more at the end of the video. What possible looks we could get, but I do have some questions with where he's going to play. No questions with how good of a players or the players they have, how good players they are. I just have questions about how they're going to implicate it. I think Jesse Minter could definitely figure it out. I have questions about how it's going to work, not questions about how good it's going to work. I guess I made that way too complicated. Anyway, Calais Campbell, great veteran presence. They bring him back to Baltimore. I think this is a great signing. I think he's almost 40. He's still playing up to a great level. He's still got the pass rush. He's just such a smart player. Good run defender. I think this is definitely a player they need to help out with the run defense. Can also rush the passer. Last year I think he played all 3 levels of the game. No, he didn't play offense. I'm an idiot. He played defense and special teams. So you think of an older guy. He's just playing defense, maybe getting some rotational snaps, not just a true start. No, this guy was a starter and he's playing special teams. He was playing a ton. So he's still got juice left in the tank. They bring back Chidobe Awuzie, a bit of a smaller boundary corner, but he's a great player, about 5'11", bring back 1 year, $5 million, like that contract. They bring in Durham Smythe. He follows Declan Doyle from the Bears last year. Good blocker, solid catcher at the backfield. I think this could be one of the guys who maybe lines up as that quote-unquote fullback role, maybe like an inline tight end and 12 or 13 personnel as a blocker. Solid player. And then they bring in Danny Pinter and Javon Gwynn, I think is how you pronounce his name. Javon Gwynn played guard with the Falcons. He was drafted as a guard. I think they're going to try him out at center. Danny Pinter is a guy who's been in the league for a couple years, I think about 5 years. He's been mostly a backup. Those are some guys they brought in to compete for that center role. They also brought in a UDFA from Penn State who obviously played with Vega Ioane, so he was the center with Vega, which if you look at the Seahawks, they went down a very similar path where they drafted Gray Zabel in the first round, but they already had Jalen Sundell, who they both play at North Dakota State together. Maybe that ends up working out. Maybe they have those two play together and that chemistry, and they just kind of elevate each other. I think that's also possible. I forget his name. I think I have it over here. Nick Dawkins. So I think he could be in that running, but they do have a couple of guys competing for that center spot. See what happens there. And they bring in Skylar Thompson. Let's bounce around a little bit. Compete to be maybe the third quarterback. They have Tyler Huntley, so I think he's probably set as their backup quarterback. Let's move on to their draft. I really like their draft. They've got a lot of picks. I think it's safe to say that like these two right here, a lot of people probably would have thought they would be swapped. People going to the draft thought Elijah Stroud was going to go much earlier and Jacoby Lane was going to go later. Talk about that in a second. I'm getting too ahead of myself. Vega Ioane, great guard. Probably the best offensive lineman in the draft if you just take away, position value, tackle versus guard, position versatility. If you just look at the film and what they did, Vega's probably the best offensive lineman in the class. He's the most valuable. No, it's probably Maui Noah Fano, one of those guys. It could end up being Monroe Freeling, who can play tackle, left tackle, right tackle, just the more valuable position. But Vega's such a good player. Great run blocker. Really good pass blocker. Amazing pass blocker. Powerful guy. Just will finish the play with bad intentions, just through the whistle. Love this pick. I think everybody was basically like, yeah, if he's at 14, the Ravens are going to take him. I think that was the sentiment for mock drafts like months before the draft. So we've talked about that a ton throughout that process. Love that pick for them. Then Zion Young, I think, is a very interesting player. He's a bigger edge rusher, like 6'5", 6'6", 260. He ran about a 4.75, I think it was, so solid athleticism, but he's an amazing run defender. This is a guy who can get on the field and make an impact day one as a run defender, but his pass rush is very limited. He's power. That's it. That's all he's got. He's bull rushing. Doesn't really have any counter moves. Doesn't really have any speed. He's not really a bendy guy. Speed to power is okay. Doesn't, a lot of refinement that has to be there. But like I said, this is a guy who could contribute on day one. And I think day one as well, he's going to be more of a guy in a 3-point or 4-point stance. I don't think he's going to be like a stand-up, 2-point stance, maybe like a guy like Trey Hendrickson would be, or if you did watch Seahawks, if you didn't know what my favorite team is the Seahawks last year, I saw a bunch of their edge rushers standing up. I don't think there's going to be a lot of, I think for him, he's going to be in an actual 3-point stance. I think he just plays better out of that, which, some players do. I think part of that is because when you're in a 2-point stance, you get so hung up with like looking in the backfield, trying to identify what's going on. If you're in a 3-point stance, you key on the tackle, you just focus on that and just do your job. And then as you develop as a player and have been in the league for longer, then maybe you could develop to that. But just as a rookie, as a guy who needs to develop, play your role, do what you can well, and let's develop you over time. I think he could eventually be a good pass rusher, like an actual contributor there, while also being like possibly an elite run defender, which is a very valuable player. Moving on to Jacoby Lane, amazing jump ball catcher, very tall, very good jumping ability. He's just like a jump ball winner. Throw him the ball up on the boundary, let him go get it. Very large catch radius. I don't know about like his ability to separate. I do have questions there, which there's a lot of talk on social media about separation numbers, like separation rate with receivers, and how much does that matter? What's the context of that? Because he's probably a guy who's running a lot of clear out routes, which that is true, but I mean, he does struggle to separate. You're not going to see this guy. He's not one of the quicker smaller receivers like a Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jamar Chase, who's just going to route you up and be blowing past you. He's not that. He's a bigger body receiver with like 4.4, 4.5 speed who can stretch the field and can make big plays. That's what you're getting with him, and he does it very well. I think you could also see him maybe in some goal line situations, maybe be a bigger slot, like, slants across the middle. Like, he's not afraid to catch the ball. Like, he will take hits. And that's a very, very good attribute to have, especially, for like red zone threats. If you run him on a slant, he's not afraid to take contact from, a linebacker or safety coming across the middle of the field. He'll take that contact, and he's got such a big catch radius, such long arms that he can go out and get the ball, almost wherever it is. So I like that pick. And then Elijah Surratt, like I said, people thought that these two players might be swapped. There was some hype for Elijah Surratt to be a second-round pick. So he ends up falling. I wasn't a huge fan of him as a prospect, which I don't like to, bash any players. Like, I'm rooting for all these guys. I want them all to do good. They all obviously are making it to the NFL. They're all great athletes, great football players. But Elijah Surratt was one of the guys that I just wasn't a huge fan of. Wherever he went, he just had production. He was with Cignetti at James Madison. Followed him to Indiana. Was just a good player. Just caught the ball, got open. Didn't really matter the measurables, athleticism, which he did actually have good measurables. About 6'2", 200 pounds, maybe 210. I think like 4.5, just like good speed. So he just found ways to produce, and I think that can contribute over to the NFL level. You just get a guy who just somehow finds how to win and get the ball, which, hey, you love that. That's what you want in your team. Just go do your thing, get open. I don't mind that pick at all, even though I wasn't huge on him. Moving on to Matthew Hibner. We'll talk about Josh Cuevas and him actually at the same time. We'll talk about Chandler Rivers in a second. So they lose Charlie Kolar, Isaiah Likely, and Pat Ricard. So there's quite a few questions there. But they bring in Hibner, they bring in Smythe, they bring in Cuevas, they bring in also Lucas Scott from Army. He's been bouncing around a little bit. He was like an offensive lineman. I think they're trying to convert him to fullback. I'm not 100% sure. But he's like 290, massive guy. Kind of similar to Patrick Ricard, but he was a former defensive lineman turned defensive lineman turned fullback. This is an offensive lineman turned fullback. So we'll see if he makes the team. I don't know. But I think honestly what you could see is more of Smythe, Hibner, and Cuevas kind of rotating in, as a fullbacks, or, you have 12, 13 personnel. Maybe you have some 22, maybe you have 21, and just these guys moving around. You also throw Mark Andrews into that. You have a lot of guys who are tight ends who can kind of play different roles. I think they're all good pass catchers. Smythe's probably on a little bit lower of a level than these other guys. But Josh Cuevas had great production at Alabama, SEC school, one of the best in the country. Very good pass catcher, good route runner for a tight end. Not really like the field stretcher as much as maybe Matthew Hibner is. He's more of like a field stretcher down the seam. Better blocker, I think, as well. But I think Cuevas lined up at fullback a little bit at Alabama, so that gives him some versatility there. Maybe he lines up there, and he's a good blocker, but also an interesting pass catcher, and just kind of adds another level to what they can do out of these different formations. Hibner also is like was a six-year college player, I think. Didn't really break out until last year with SMU, and then at the combine ran about 4.57. So good athleticism, like I said, can stretch up the seams. I think these two players in Hibner and Cuevas are very interesting. I think both of them should make the team and make an impact. I think we can see probably 4 tight ends on this team all play, and I think we're starting to trend towards that across the NFL. Look at the Rams. They've got every tight end in existence. 49ers use a bunch of tight ends. We saw last year Seahawks using a lot of tight ends. A lot of the good teams in the NFL using tight ends, using them effectively, being able to run, but also being able to throw the ball out of bigger formations. Get defenses to bring in another linebacker, or if they don't, let them be a nickel. Let's run on them. If they don't have a bigger nickel, or somebody who is a great in coverage and also a good run defender, we're just gonna run on you. But if you bring in a linebacker, we're just going to throw on you. It creates a very big predicament for the defense. I think the Ravens can do that with these guys they brought in. I like those 2 picks. Now Chandler Rivers from Duke, play boundary there, but he's definitely more of a slot corner, a bit smaller, solid athleticism. He's a baller. He's a football player. but he is smaller. Kind of similar to a guy like D'Angelo Pons, who I think he's a little bit bigger than D'Angelo Pons, but smaller guy, just because of their height, not because of their play, or they're not like great player. I think that just doesn't translate to the NFL because you have so many receivers that are just bigger that they're already at a disadvantage. And, they're not just that much better than those guys technically. Like, if you have them line up against DK Metcalf, or even like a average size receiver, Justin Jefferson is like 6'1", that size, even though he's one of the better route runners, that size would play a massive part. And then he's already just better technically. So now you're at two disadvantages. That's a bit of an issue. So I think he's going to be a very good slot corner. He's going to be backup. They've got a lot of guys who could play that area, but he's probably their backup nickel, true nickel corner. Whereas Kyle Hamilton's more of like a chess piece, play man, anywhere apex defender, than Marlon Humphrey's a nickel, but I think he could always play some boundary. Chandler Rivers is going to be maybe seeming some dime packages. I think that's where he plays. Adam Randall, the owner, Steve Bisciotti, I believe is his name. The owner, this was his pick. So I think you could basically guarantee he's making the team. He's actually an interesting player, though. I think he's about 6'2", 230. Former receiver turned running back. So with that size and that receiver background, very interesting player. Not a ton happened at Clemson last year because that team was awful. I remember watching some Peter Woods and TJ Parker clips. I don't know what the hell was going on with that team. They sucked. That's it. I think Adam Randall, though, can be an interesting player at this level. I think he's going to compete with Rasheem Ali, maybe for that third. Maybe they keep full running backs. Like I said, the owner picked him, so it's pretty likely he's going to make the team. But he's an interesting player. That size, pass catching ability, definitely has a place. You'd imagine with that size also he's a pretty good pass protector. I'm really not sure about his pass protection, but that's Adam Randall, probably going to make the team. Then they bring in Ryan Eckley, punter. He's going to be their punter, I would assume. Rayshon Benny, bit of a weirder player. He's like 6'3", 290 with like 33-inch arms. I saw some people really like this guy. I thought he might have been like a third or fourth round talent. Goes in the 7th. There's a lot of defensive line depth on this team already, so I have some questions if he's going to even make the team. But I think he's a good player. I think he does have a role. We'll see if he makes a team. Then Evan Burnson from Northwestern, I believe, was a 7-year college player. So he was in college for a long time. You look at his picture, he looks like he's a father of 4. Older guy. Not the greatest athlete, but he has so much experience. I think I saw he had maybe 51 college starts, I think it was. So he's played a lot of football. He's this okay athlete. I think he honestly could also be in that group competing at center. I know he says as guard, drafts as a guard. He could be in there playing at center. He's just played so much football. Also, I think to make the roster as well, because they obviously have a big hole at center. If he proves that, like, okay, this could be a guy at center, I think that's a possibility. But overall, I think it's a very good draft class. I like what they did. I think the players they brought in align very well with the coaches that they have. And I think you have some guys who are ready to go now who could contribute, but also who can develop, like Zion Young, who can contribute day one, like I said, but could also develop and be a very interesting player. You bring in your tight ends, they could impact the game in a ton of different ways. You bring in these receivers, very interesting players. I like Vega, probably the best offensive lineman. Chandler Rivers, great depth piece at the nickel. Adam Randall, who I'm very interested to see. You get your starting punter, and then these two guys who are going to be fighting for depth spots on the roster. I think this is a very good draft. Probably might be one of the better ones. We'll see how it pans out. Definitely some question marks, but I would give it overall one of the better grades probably. I don't love doing the draft grades because you actually have to see it happen. Like, these guys haven't played any football yet, so we have no idea. It depends a lot on how the team plans to employ them, where they're going to use them, how much they're going to use them, if they get injured. So I don't love the draft grades, but looking at the prospects and how I think they could use them, I think this is one of the better drafts. Looking at compensatory picks. If you're not sure what compensatory picks are, basically every year teams have compensatory free agents, CFAs, that they lose and that they can go out and sign. So basically, see a guy like Tyler Linderbaum, who they lost. That was a compensatory free agent. Basically, if you're a compensatory free agent and another team comes and signs you, the team that you're leaving, so in this case, the Ravens, can get a compensatory pick. So you see here, Trey Hendrickson left from the Bengals to go to the Ravens. The Bengals can get a 3rd-round pick for Trey Hendrickson. That's because he was paid one of the highest salaries of all these guys, and then also it can depend on how you play. So if you get Pro Bowl nods, All Pro, different like statistical numbers, it's basically just all the players that qualify as compensatory free agents based off the money they were paid. You could get draft picks for them. It just tacks on to the end of the round. So Trey Hendrickson, if they end up getting this pick, the first third round compensatory pick, they'll just get pick 33, and so on and so forth. So, however, the Tyler Linderbaum and Trey Hendrickson for the Ravens actually cancels out, but they're going to get a 5th-round pick projected for Isaiah Likely. It could be less if he performs terribly and some other guys perform great, or it could be better if he ends up performing really well. He's maybe, I doubt it, but maybe he's an All-Pro or a Pro Bowler, and then they could maybe get a better pick. Once again, I doubt that. Look to get a 5th round from Draymond Jones, Charlie Kolar 6th, and Pat Carter 7th. So they're going to get 4 projected extra draft picks next year, which, awesome. Why wouldn't you want the extra draft picks? So that's that. Moving on to their multi-year salary cap table. This year, they're looking okay. Lamar's only getting $34 million. And then you look to the right. Oh my gosh, he's getting paid $84 million next year. That's a bit of a problem. That's a lot of money. And you also might be looking at this orange here. What are these numbers? Basically, teams can use void years. That basically extends how much money is being paid in the contract. So, taking a step back, when you sign a contract in the NFL, you're given a base salary and a signing bonus. The signing bonus is stretched out over the length of the contract. So let's say you sign a 4-year contract with a $20 million signing bonus. That $20 million signing bonus is spread out across the 4 years, so it'll be $5 million a year. Basically, what the Ravens have done here is they've restructured his contract so that some of the signing bonus is split out over to this year. So it's not included here, or else they would be paying insane amounts of money these 2 years. If the Ravens were to not re-sign Lamar Jackson, say that he plays on this and they don't re-sign him, this dead cap, this just becomes dead cap. $42 million dead cap, nothing you could do about it. If they extend him, this would be tacked on to his extension. So $42 million, if it's a 4-year extension, they could spread out over the 4-year extension. Now you look at a guy like Marlon Humphrey, who's a little bit different. $26 million this year, but then he's got multiple years of void years. $11 million, or almost $12 million, $3 million, $3 million. If they decide not to bring him back next year, all this money will accelerate to this year. So it'll be about, I'm not great at math, 14 or a lot. It'll be a lot of money that they'll have to pay all this money this year. I'm not great at math. It's okay. So that'll all accelerate. Then you look at, the Lamar Jackson contract could be some issues. That's basically what void years are. It basically opens up the team's window to win because they get more money to use, but it can pigeonhole you in the future. Obviously, the people running these teams, the GMs, front office executives are very smart people, and they've already planned this stuff out. They're probably already thinking about Lamar Jackson extension to spread this money out so they can compete. So if you are a fan, don't worry about that. I'm sure they're going to figure that out. I'm sure they might have already figured it out. They just need to execute it. There's some things they have to clean up. Other than that, Roquan Smith getting a lot of money for a linebacker, very expensive, $32 million, but he is probably a top 3 inside linebacker in the league. I think Fred Warner's 1. I think you've got guys like Jack Campbell and him might be fighting for number 2. Ernest Jones, I am biased. I'm a Seahawks fan, but he was on the Super Bowl team. He was the leader of that defense. So, argue with the wall if you want. I think he's one of the better linebackers. If you disagree with me, I don't care. Nnamdi Madubuike, we haven't talked about. So, scary neck injury. We're not sure what's going to happen. He underwent neck surgery in the offseason. They think he can play this year. When? No clue. They're not sure. He's been practicing, he's been working out, but there's no real timetable on when he's going to come back. This is a great player. When Mike McDonald was there, he really made Nnamdi Madubuike break out. When he's on the field, he's one of the better interior defensive linemen, pass rush wise, good run defender. They need him back on the field. Like I said, don't know if he's going to be there. For Ravens fans' sake, for Nnamdi Madubuike, for the coach, for the team's sake, I hope he's back. Great player. Don't know. Moving on, Trey Hendrickson, you can see this contract spread out. I know it's 4 years, $112 million, but like I said, with signing bonus and base salary, you could spread things out. He's already got some void years on there for $9 million there. And Kyle Hamilton, for what he brings to the table and how valuable is, this contract's not bad. Ronnie Stanley, he's been hurt a lot. He's getting up there in age. I'm not sure how much of this is guaranteed. See if he's on the team next year. I actually thought that it was very possible going into the draft process that they would be looking at Monroe Freeling at 14, maybe in a trade back, draft Monroe Freeling and have him develop maybe under Ronnie Stanley. I was very interested in that possibility, but obviously that didn't happen. Mark Andrews, very small contract for what he can bring. I didn't know there was a team option on this. Interesting. They have a club option. Didn't know that. Rashad Bateman, solid player. He's getting some, like a decent contract. Calais Campbell on a 1-year deal, Project Washington on a 1-year deal. But yeah, they are tied up for a lot of money at the top, and their best players. Don't worry, I'm sure they're gonna figure it out. They've already planned this out. So if you're looking at this and you think, oh God, we're screwed, relax, it's okay. Let's move on to their depth chart. So we look at their receivers: Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Tez Walker, Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt. I think this wide receiver 3 position is very much up for grabs. I think any one of Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, Devontae Walker could be seeing the field a ton. Zay Flowers is a slot receiver. He's only 5'9", so he's not going to be lining up in like a boundary like X role. That's just not his game. I see guys like Surratt or Jacoby Lane maybe line up as an X. I think those guys, like I said, can definitely fight their way in. But Tez Walker has shown quite a bit of potential over the past couple of years. And that's another issue that a lot of people have with John Harbaugh, is that, like, it's not really on John Harbaugh because, like I said, he wasn't really running the offense or calling plays. I think guys like Tez Walker really should have been getting more reps. They just more rotation of players. I think that would have really helped them out. But for some reason, they didn't really do a lot of that. Whatever. Moving on, just forget the John Harbaugh era. Let's move on to the Jesse Minter era. I think, like I said, these guys could contribute. Say Flowers in the slot. Interesting group. Offensive line, like I said, no center. It's going to be a competition. Nick Dawkins, the UDFA, maybe he steps up because of his chemistry with Vega Ioane. I don't know. These guys are going to battle it out. And then, honestly, other than that, their starting offensive line's not bad. Roger Rosengarten going into year 2 or 3 from Washington. Solid tackle, not a bad player at all. But then they've also got Emory Jones, who is a very interesting prospect from last year's draft from LSU. Solid athlete. Came out as a tackle, transitioned into guard. Interesting player. Andrew Voorhees, who tore his ACL and then still went to the combine and then broke. I think he broke the record. It was like 40 or 30 something reps on bench press with one leg, which is just ridiculous. If you never bench pressed before, you use your legs more than you might think in bench press. So to do that with one leg is insane. If he had both, who knows how many reps he would have got. Trevor Penning's brother, Dago Pounce, is a massive human being, like 6'6", 340. Huge guy. Then, like I said, Evan Bernstein actually might maybe transition to center. I think he might benefit from that. See what happens there. Other than the tight end room, we got these 4 guys. Mark Andrews is clearly the number 1. Then we'll see how they employ these 3 guys. I think it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. I think they all are versatile players who could do different things. I think they all are good blockers. I think they all can contribute in the pass game. I think they could all line up in different places, move tight end, inline tight end, fullback. Very interesting what they'll do. Lamar, obviously, top 3 quarterback in the league. You could argue he's the best. You could argue he's 2. I mean, you look at Mahomes, Josh Allen. Maybe you want to throw Joe Burrow in there. Probably Sam Darnold. Anyway, one of the best in the league. Tyler Huntley, great backup. Joe Fagnano from UConn was a solid player last year. Him and Skylar Bell did great. Bring in Diego Pavia. We'll see if he makes a team. Teams usually only keep 2 or 3 quarterbacks. Skylar Thompson they brought in, so there's actually quite a bit of competition in this room. And then at running back, a lot going on here. Derrick Henry, obviously one of the best backs in the league. Justice Hill, good third down back, good pass catcher, solid blocker. Rasheem Ali, interesting kick returner. And Adam Randall, we talked about earlier. Teams usually only keep 3, maybe 4 running backs. A lot of it depends on if they keep, fullbacks or tight ends. So we'll see what happens here. But Adam Randall was the owner's pick, so it would be pretty awkward if he got cut. So something might happen. We'll see. Then Lucas Sky talked about earlier, transitioned linebacker into not linebacker, offensive lineman into fullback. We'll see if he makes a team. Then the defense. Very excited for this defense. Justin Madubuike, hopefully he's healthy. Broderick Washington, another, I know these guys are listed as defensive ends. It's really more for technicality sake. If you look at a 3-4 defense, you have a nose tackle and 2 defensive ends, but they're based these guys are these guys are defensive tackles. So Madubuike, Calais Campbell, Broderick Washington, defensive tackles. And Travis Jones and John Jenkins are both nose tackles. Playing a 0-1 tech, taking up blockers, taking up space. But Madubuike, Washington, Calais Campbell, those are your smaller guys who have a little bit more pass rush ability and play, further out, maybe a 3 tech. So a nose tackle would be a guy like Dexter Lawrence, and then just a regular defensive tackle would be Chris Jones, but he also plays off the edge. Let's see, Leonard Williams is also in that category of he's listed as defensive end in a lot of places, but he's a defensive tackle just for technicality's sake. Then Trey Hendrickson, they bring in, great edge rusher. They have Tavius Robinson, who I really like 6'6", 260, good run defender, shows some pass rushing chops. I'm actually a pretty big fan of his. I think they actually have a very good rotation here. Mike Green from Marshall was in first round conversations, was an amazing pass rusher, very explosive, was a good run defender, even though he's only 6'3", 250, so a little bit smaller, but he had some off the field stuff, so he ended up falling in the draft. But he's a great player. I think he can develop and be very interesting on this team. Talk about Zion Young. Adisa Isaac, I think, can also contribute if they do end up keeping 5 edge rushers. I don't know if they will. But all 5 of those guys I really like. I think all of them as well can be useful in stunts. Like I said in the beginning, I think this team's going to be using a lot of them. I think all those guys can be of use in there. And then Roquan Smith, we talked about, one of the best linebackers, probably a top 3 linebacker in the league. Teddy Buchanan, a solid compliment to him. Probably going to be playing Roquan Smith's going to be playing the mic. And Trent Simpson, who great athlete, who they drafted a couple years back now from Clemson. Interesting player. I think he will rotate in and get some PT. Just Teddy Buchanan kind of beat him out for that spot. But I really like him. They have some other depth pieces here. And then talking about their secondary, Kyle Hamilton, Malachi Starks, and Jalen Hawkins. Great trio. 3 very good players who they can employ in many different spots. I think Malachi Starks could also actually come up and play in the box a little bit as a nickel as well. He did a lot at Georgia. He even played a little bit of boundary corner at Georgia. He's got very good man coverage skills. All 3 of these guys can literally play all over the field. Jalen Hawkins has played deep. He's played up in the box at nickel. Kyle Hamilton's probably played every position you could possibly imagine. Like I just explained with Malachi Starks, he can play nickel. He even played boundary corner at Georgia. Plays free safety. A lot of different places they could put him in. Kayvon Wallace, former Seattle Seahawk, bounced around for a little bit here now. Interesting player. Some other depth. Then at corner, Nate Wiggins, absolute speedster from Clemson, 4.2 speed. Very interesting player, very solid player. Chidobe Awuzie we talked about. Marlon Humphrey in the nickel we talked about. Not sure how much longer he's going to be on this team. There were even some talks about him just getting cut this offseason. Hasn't happened. Chandler Rivers, we talked about, really like him. TJ Tampa, who, when he was drafted, I think it might have been 2 years ago now, from Iowa State, there was talks that he was going to be in the second round. I think on Daniel Jeremiah's board, he was up there, and then he ended up falling. I believe it's because of scheme compatibility things, but he's a solid player. Armani Oruwariye, been bouncing around for a little bit. Lions, Giants, I believe. Then just some other depth pieces, but I think this team right here is a definite Super Bowl contender. Any team that's got Lamar Jackson is already, in that contention. But they've got some very good playmakers: Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, Derrick Henry, Rashad Bateman, Tez Walker can make plays. Maybe Jacoby Lane, Elijah Surratt, step up. Their tight end depth, maybe they step up. I think this defense is going to be formidable, especially if Nnamdi Madubuike is healthy. Very scary team with a lot of different players that they can employ in different areas and really confuse you. But yeah, I really like this team. But let's just really quickly, before I end the video, talk about maybe some of the stuff that Declan Doyle can implement and try to explain me like 12 or 13 personnel. So this would just be your regular 11 personnel: receiver, running back, tight end, and then you have your slot receiver. So 11 personnel, 1 running back, 1 tight end. But you can then maybe say, gotta change this. You could say maybe this is Mark Andrews, and then just say that this is Durham Smythe. This now is 12 personnel. So they've got 2 tight ends and 1 running back. So, and then further from there, you could say, oh, maybe this is Matthew Hibner now. Maybe he's in there. So now they're in 13 personnel. And if you want to take it even one step further, we could put in maybe Josh Cuevas here and be in 14 personnel. What would be more likely to happen is maybe this is Cuevas or whoever lining up at linebacker, and then, maybe this is Rashad Bateman, whoever splitting out wide at receiver. Actually, let's do this, the X receiver, and then say that that's their fullback. Then they've got 2 tight ends here. So this would be 22 personnel, 2 tight ends, 2 running backs. Basically, I think you're going to see a lot of that from Declan Doyle and the Ravens this year, especially with the, how dynamic of a runner Lamar Jackson is and Derrick Henry. I think if you get teams to really commit to stopping the run, then you have these dynamic pass-catching tight ends who could leak out. I think you create some massive problems for them, and I think they're going to be able to run the ball. I think Vega's going to do a great job. I think John Simpson's going to do a great job. Hopefully they can elevate whoever is playing at center, and obviously Ronnie Stanley, Roger Rosengarten. But yeah, overall, I think this is a very good offseason for the Ravens. I think they hit with their coaching staff. I think they made good draft picks. I think this is definitely a Super Bowl contending team. I think they might be the front runners for the AFC North right now. I think if I was to pick a team, it might be them. I mean, them and the Bengals, because the Steelers still don't have a quarterback, and who knows what's going on with the Browns. But this is definitely a competitive team. Would not be surprised if they're in the AFC Championship. Wouldn't be surprised if they make a run in the playoffs. Watch out for the Ravens this year. But anyway, thank you for watching this video. If you liked it, make sure to like, subscribe, comment. If you have any questions or disagree with me, or you want to have any discussions about any of the moves, drop a comment. But yeah, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next episode.